Welcome back to Truth Bombs and Tea. Today we are looking at procrastination, that sneaky habit that we have that gets in the way of us achieving things and getting things done. So before I start, I just want to have a little caveat to say my voice may be sounding raspy. That's because I've been quite sick this last 10 days nearly. So my voice has only just come back and I've only just stopped coughing. So I might have a little cough or have to pause the video so that I, don't cough your ears out or have a sip of my water. So today we're looking at procrastination. I'm going to be looking at what that actually is, why we do it. And here's a spoiler, it's not because you're lazy. There is a researched back reason why we procrastinate. And then I'm going to share 3 top insights and tips about procrastination. And there'll be a follow-up video as well, which I'll link down in the notes, that has another 7 effective research backed uh, strategies. So the reason why I'm separating them is, well, one, I've been given feedback that around the 15 or 20-minute mark is a great time period. So I don't want to go over that. And number 2 is I'll probably need a little break in between. Otherwise, my voice will go. So I'm just sharing 3 really effective ones, but the other 7 are very, very effective as well. So be sure to check that video out. If you are new here, welcome. We're all about living the rest of our life as the best of our life. And so I cover emotional intelligence, mental health, and we'll be going into the physical and spiritual health realms as well, because all of those 4 components are necessary to live a really fulfilled life. All right, so let's begin. So it turns out that 25% of all adults actually procrastinate. So, that's pretty high. And it's probably a little bit more than that, but the people who, meant to fill the research in put it off. So they procrastinated. So it's at least 25%. And when it comes to surveys and research on students, it floats around the 90 to 95%. Okay. So what is procrastination? So research has a bit of a fancy term or a bit of a fancy meaning for it. And it says procrastination is a common and troubling form of self-regulation failure, okay, which sounds pretty negative. But basically what that means is that we are voluntarily putting things off because we're not able to self-regulate well. So it's kind of a form of self-sabotage. So, over the last 20 or 30 years, they have looked at the research and they have determined that one of the greatest factors that makes us procrastinate is overwhelm and stress. Okay. And if you think about that, as the pace of life and the demands and the obligations and the information overload has overtaken us, our brains, which are not wired for that, are finding it hard to cope. Back in the day, when you were in a cave or in a tribe, you wouldn't procrastinate because all of the things that you had to do were immediate for your survival. So everybody kind of knew what they had to do and they did it, because if they didn't, the consequences wouldn't be great. Okay. But today we have far more options, and the more options and information, the brain really isn't created to sift through so much stuff. And so the phenomenon of procrastination, has was born and has built up. All right. So research from 2024 shows that there's a lot of variables for each of us. Like, we don't procrastinate, all of us don't procrastinate on the same things. Okay. But that procrastination is voluntary. And that's good news, because that means that we can modify and overcome that. But turns out that research has pointed to the fact that our brain on an evolutionary basis is wired for immediate gratification, okay? Immediate reward over future benefits. And if you think about that, it makes total sense. When we needed to find food, it was a matter of life or death. So our brain needed to sort through environmental factors to be able to zero in on the thing that would give us the food the quickest, right? It wasn't saying, oh, maybe I'll learn to plant corn and in 6 weeks, or 12 weeks, I'll be able to eat it. No, it was a matter of life or death. So our brain is wired to give us what we need as quickly as possible, okay? And it doesn't sort of forecast into the future, because when our brain was formed, there possibly or potentially wasn't a future if we didn't get food and we didn't protect ourselves from danger. So, on an evolutionary basis, we are wired for immediate reward. But the fact that it is a voluntary structure or thought pattern or neural pathway means that we can modify it now that we're not living in caves, and thankfully we don't have a life or death situation presented to us every day. We can now modify our pathway to suit this more modern life. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments about that if that makes sense. So I'm going to share with you 3 strategies now that really work, and that's been proven by science and research. So the first one is the 2-minute rule, and no, not the one where you drop a piece of food on the floor, and if it's I suppose that's a 60-second rule. This one's a 2-minute rule. That means that if a task takes less than 2 minutes to do it straight away. Like, don't add it to the to-do list or for a future time, because those small tasks can be eliminated, and that way they're not stacking in your brain and overwhelming it. So it's things like unstacking the dishwasher or stacking the dishwasher. It takes 2 minutes. Putting the washing on, the laundry on with the washing machine. It could be checking your personal email for 2 minutes. So anything that's 2 minutes, do it. Okay. If it's more than 2 minutes, use the 2-minute rule anyway. So, say, for example, you have to write a report for work. You're not going to write a whole report in 2 minutes, and you're probably putting it off because you're thinking, oh, I don't want to write that report. But in 2 minutes, you could come up with a title. In 2 minutes, you could come up with an outline. Okay. And research has shown that the hardest part of a task that we're procrastinating on is starting it. So once you start it in that 2-minute bracket, oftentimes the next 2-minute bracket will flow on. So you might do the title for 2 minutes, and then you think, okay, well, I'll spend just another 2 minutes doing the outline. You do that. Then you think, oh, okay, well, I know that first part. I'll spend 2 minutes writing that first part. So oftentimes it's that real stuck wheel that we've got to kind of turn to get it going. And within that 2 minutes, we can do that. And then it starts to roll by itself, oftentimes. Okay. So that's the 2-minute rule. Strategy number 2 is called implementation intention. So that's just a fancy way of saying, have goals with specificity and intention, right? Don't have vague goals. So, for example, don't say, I'm going to exercise more, because your brain doesn't even have anything to hold on to, right? So it comes and goes and nothing's done. But if you say, every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m., I'm going to the gym, your brain can easily conceptualize and hold that. And it's not toing and froing on anything. There's a definitive statement and intention, and your brain is not drained from thinking, oh, exercise more, oh, when will I go, oh, this and that and that and that fatigues your brain. When you have goals with intention, your brain can relax then, knowing that you've made a decision and it gets done. Okay, so number 2 is implementation intentions, which just means have specific goals which have clear tasks and timelines. Okay, because oftentimes we put things off because we say, oh, I really must get around to cleaning out that bedroom. Okay, and then 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years later, the bedroom's still there. But if you say something like, every Monday, I'm going to spend an hour in that bedroom, it will be done. And the last one for this video is the procrastination equation. I found this really fascinating, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it too once I've explained it to you. So research has shown that motivation, which is basically like moving into action and getting tasks done, has a formula. And the formula is um, motivation equals expectancy times value divided by impulsiveness multiplied by delay. And I know that sounds quite complicated, but it isn't. And I'm going to break it down for you now. So the procrastination equation is that motivation equals expectancy times value divided by impulsiveness and delay. So expectancy means how confident are you that, this job will be done, multiplied by value, which is how valuable or important is this task to you. Okay, so that's the first bit. How confident am I that I can get it done, multiplied by how important is it for me, what's the value in it to get it done, divided by impulsiveness. That means how easily are you going to be distracted from this task, multiplied by the delay, like how far away is the reward going to be. So they're the positive bits at the front, but then you have to divide it by the negative bits, and that's what happens in procrastination. Okay, so to beat that equation, so the more uh, confident and competent you are, and the more important the task to you, and the less distractions and impulsive behavior you can display, and the greater the reward, or the quicker the reward, the more you get done. The less important it is and the less confident you feel, less things get done. Okay, so let me give you an example. All right, so expectancy. Break big tasks down into smaller ones, okay? Because that will increase the expectancy, which means you expect to achieve it. It goes up because you're tackling small bits at a time and you feel confident and competent in doing that, okay? So to increase the expectancy of your confidence, break things down into smaller tasks. To increase the value and importance of that task, connect it to larger goals. So, for example, if you were to do a presentation at work, your expectancy and competency will increase if you break that presentation down and give it a specific timeline. So if you've got to present on Friday, you say, I'm going to get the outline done on the Monday. I'm going to get the slides done on the Tuesday. I'm going to have a practice session on the Wednesday. I'm going to wrap it all up on Thursday, and then I'm going to present on Friday. So each of those smaller tasks increases your confidence and competency rather than cramming for the presentation on the Thursday night. Okay. So to increase the value of it, like connect that presentation to a bigger goal. So presentation isn't that, that doesn't thrill you. But if you can say to yourself, if I get this presentation done really well, I'm going to be considered for a promotion. Okay, so that increases the value of that task. So the presentation in of itself isn't that valuable, but the fact that it's going to lead to a promotion or a pay rise is. Okay, so you've just increased the expectancy and the value. Now it's time to decrease the negative impacts. Okay, so we can decrease the impulsiveness or the distractions by removing distractions from your environment. So, for example, if you take the presentation, turn your phone on to silent or leave your phone in another room while you're doing the presentation, and don't have tabs up on social media. Okay. You may even put like a Pomodoro timer on, so that it chunks it down into 25 to 45-minute intervals. Or you can use one of those focused browsers that doesn't allow you to open up any other tabs on your computer. So you're minimizing the impulsiveness. Okay. And in order to decrease the delay, because as we said, the brain likes immediate reward. So we want to try and bring the reward closer. We can create artificial deadlines. Okay. So an immediate reward. So in this presentation example, after you finish the presentation, your boss isn't immediately going to give you the promotion. So how do we bring the reward closer? Well, we might say after we finish the presentation, we're going to go out for a nice meal with our family, or we might go for drinks after work and celebrate with coworkers. Okay. So what we're doing is we're increasing our chances of feeling competent and increasing the value of what we're doing, and we're decreasing the impulsiveness, and we're decreasing the delay. And that means that the chances of procrastinating are really diminished. Okay. So have a think about those three. They're all, as I said, research and science backed. All of them work. And choose one of those to have a look at and implement, because, as I said, the brain gets overwhelmed. And that's why I'm splitting this video into two as well. So choose one and test it out and see. And I'd love to hear about your progress in the comments, or if you've got any questions, please feel free to comment. And I will link the other 7 effective strategies so that you can overcome, or at least very greatly minimize how you procrastinate, in the next video. So thanks for listening to my raspy voice. So until we talk again, let's make the rest of our life the very best of our life. Bye for now.